1 John 2:15. Do not love the world or the things in the world. If anyone loves the world, the love of the Father is not in him. For all that is in the world, the desires of the flesh and the desires of the eyes and pride in possessions is not from the Father, but is from the world, and the world is passing away along with its desires. But whoever does the will of God abides forever. So there's 1 John 2:15 through 17. Let's of course, we're going to talk about this. You remember the text that we were looking at as a starter. Passions of the flesh. There are passions that they wage war against our souls. And we're in a battle. We talked about pride, a desire to be great, a desire to seek self-exaltation. That's one of the things we really have to fight. Another one that we have to fight is a world. Think about that. Paul says, be not conformed to this world. What does the word conform mean?
Set in the mold of?
Yeah, to be set in the mold of. To be, basically, when I was in engineering, we had basic types of molds or presses or, basically if you have a mold, you inject plastic into it. The plastic comes out looking like what?
Whatever the mold is.
Whatever shape the mold is. If you have a press, and you basically put a chunk of steel in there, and this thing comes down, bang, and hits it. What it does is it'll fold it, bend it, it'll shape it, just like that press hits it and means to shape it. Be not conformed to the world means. Listen, one of the things that wages war against the soul is this world that is constantly pressing on you to conform to it. It's constantly applying pressure to shape you into its form. That's what be not conformed to the world means. Don't take its shape. Don't end up look-liking it. Don't allow its realities, its attributes, its character to get somehow molded into your life. You brought up James 1:27. What does it say?
The religion that is pure and undefiled before God the Father is this: to visit orphans and widows in their affliction, and to keep oneself unstained from the world.
So not only does it try to shape us, it's constantly trying to stain us. We need to resist as we fight being conformed and being stained by it. Brethren, it's pressing us all the time. It's pressing us to be like it. It's a battle. You got to fight it all the time. You know why you have to fight it all the time? My wife was just reading, I think Sierra had assigned books to the children. And so Joy was reading through Hudson Taylor. Hudson Taylor one day was going into a certain Chinese village, and they asked him, do you want to come see our holy man? We were talking about this the other night, weren't we? Anyway, the holy man, he goes up there and he goes up to a brick wall, and there's a hole in it, and the holy man's inside there. He looks in there. Basically, the holy man was bricked in. They built this solid brick home, not really a home, a prison all the way around him with only one hole in it. That's all the light that came in. That's where all his food came in. And he was in there by himself in the dark. And people worshipped him. That was the holy man. And when Hudson Taylor inquired about it, well, they put him in there because the thought was if you isolate him totally from people, he won't sin anymore. And brethren, this world can go through brick walls. I mean, the fact is you can't escape. Well, my whole point in bringing it up is this. In 1 Corinthians 5, you've got somebody in the church that's guilty of sin, and it says don't even eat with them. Put them out. Little leaven leavens the lump. Get rid of it. But Paul there says, but I'm not saying to do that with people that are lost. Otherwise, what? You would have to come out of the world. But God doesn't want us to build brick walls all the way around us with a little hole. Because He wants us to be what? Salt and light. And so here's the problem. Jesus determines that we should be the witness for Him. So we need to be in the world, but not of the world. So there's the catch. You and I are not told to go to the cloister. We're not told to go to the convent or to the monastery. We're not told. That's another thing. My wife goes to the library with the kids and comes home with this video. It's a video about the Carthaginian or Cartesian monastery in France. It is supposed to be one of the most ascetic monasteries in the world. A German film producer inquired for permission to go in there. 16 years later, word came back, okay, you can come. They went in and lived there, the crew, for 6 months. The people they don't talk. When they go out, sometimes they can talk, and sometimes they're chanting, but it's just silent all the time. It's just, God has not called us to that. Why do they go in there? They go in there because they think, they actually show the induction of 2 of these guys. And it's supposed to be like, you're coming here basically to pursue holiness to a degree nobody else can achieve. But brethren, that's not true. That's false religion. All they're doing is establishing a self-righteousness that's just going to lead to their damnation. That is not what we've been called to do. We've been called to be salt and light. Well, to be salt and light, we got to get out there where it's dark. We got to get out there where it's putrefying, where that salt can actually be a preservative, where it can add the taste. And so that's what we're called to do. So there's the rub right there. Jesus pushes them out, right? Sheep in the midst of wolves. Go out there. Now, when you go out there, be like serpents, be like doves, but we go out there. And the whole time we're out there, and we're being witnesses, and we're shining, and we're being cunning, and we're being wise as these serpents, and harmless as these doves, and we're trying to be this salt and light. What we have in return is a world that is constantly trying to stain us and constantly trying to conform us to it. And it's a pressure. It's a pressure, brethren. And I have to believe all the more in our day. You know, the truth is, people were people 200 years ago. But look what they didn't have. I mean, do you know how much of the world comes at us through computers and televisions? Do you realize how much? 100 years ago they didn't have those things. 200 years ago there wasn't any electricity except flashing around in the sky. They didn't have it to power all this stuff. I mean, right now, do you know how many people are camped in front of a television across our city right now? If you were to guess percentage-wise, 80% probably. In front of a television right now. 200 years ago, if we were here right now in this place, where would we be? There might be a couple candles lit, or we'd all be in bed. This is what you did when there wasn't any power. You basically arose with the sun and you went down with the sun. Somebody out there? Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead and let him in.
All right. How's it going?
Good. So, this the influence that we're exposed to today is just astronomical. I mean, do you guys realize these smartphones that have internet access, they can play movies on it? Do you realize just in the palm of your hand what you have access to today? I mean, all that the world thrives. I mean, basically, what does it say about this world? Who's in control of it? Yeah, you have the prince of the power of the air. And you've got all this garbage, and it's seeking to stain and seeking to conform. Brethren, you got to fight. If you just lay down, this thing will chew you up. Brethren, we got to do battle. There's things coming at us you need to not expose yourself to. You need to resist. You need to not let stain you. This is an all-out battle. Remember, there are anti-soul forces that we're dealing with, and the world is one of them. It is one of them. And all those passions flow right out of this world, and we're going to see it. This concept of passions and lust is very closely associated with the world. But here's the thing. When we see the term world, you see, this is one of those terms like flesh, like righteousness, like justify, that you got to know your context. I mean, in other words, when you find the word in the Scriptures, you need to have an idea about what's being talked about there to be able to figure out what the word actually means. Because the term world is used in a lot of places. Let me give you an example. You guys tell me what this means. Acts 17:24. Just listen to it. The God who made the world and everything in it, being Lord of heaven and earth, does not live in temples made by man. So what does world mean right there? Yeah, it means the creation. The created earth. And everything that's in it. It's all that God has created. I mean, that's the context there. I mean, 1 Corinthians 7:33. But the married man is anxious about worldly things. How to please his wife. That doesn't necessarily mean sinful. Otherwise, marriage would be wrong. Right? I mean, that's context there in 1 Corinthians 7. Paul's not forbidding marriage. In fact, he's very much condoning it. I mean, if you don't have the gift of celibacy and the gift of singleness, he basically says it's good to marry. Now, he says if you get married, you're going to have problems. And basically, you're going to have to be taken up with worldly things. By worldly, he doesn't mean sinful, things that are going to conform you and spot you. He means physical. Physical things are going to take up. So, world can mean like this earth. World can mean the physical realm. It doesn't have to have a negative connotation necessarily. How about this? Mark 16:15. He said, Jesus said to them, go into all the world and proclaim the gospel to the whole creation. Again, we got this idea of the whole creation being the world. Now, Father, glorify me in your own presence with the glory that I had with you before the world existed. You see, it's got to do with that which exists, that which is created. So you guys see that. It's got to do with the physical realm. How about this? Romans 3:6. By no means, for then how could God judge the world? Or how about, who does God judge? He judges the world. But I mean, is that all creation? Does he judge rocks? Does he judge trees? Does he judge lakes? What do you think is meant by the world there? The what?
The people in.
Yeah, people in the world. And in fact, right there, the world of mankind. John 16:8. When He comes, He will convict the world concerning sin, righteousness, and judgment. Obviously, again, He's not talking the physical realm. He's talking people. People get convicted. Rocks don't get convicted. Or what's probably the most famous verse in all the Bible? For God so loved the world. That, again, this isn't saying that God sent His Son to die for rocks and trees and clouds. And He's talking about mankind. And very possibly it's used sometimes, not just for mankind in general, but mankind meaning all the Gentiles. For instance, Romans 11:15. Paul's talking in verse 14 about the Jews, and then he says, if their rejection means the reconciliation of the world, what will their acceptance mean but life from the dead? So sometimes world is like the earth, sometimes world is all the created realm, it's all that's physical, sometimes it's all of mankind, sometimes it's all of mankind apart from the Jews. It's a word that's got to do with a system or order, or for instance, like 2 Peter 3:6, that by means of these the world that existed was deluged with water and perished. So Peter's saying there was a world that existed before the flood. The flood came and now it doesn't exist anymore. What's that? That's not the earth. That's not the physical. That's not even the people. Some of the people were preserved. It was the world order. The things that, the way the whole system was, it was wiped out. So it's sometimes it's got to do with that. You see, it's got, and then in various places it's kind of hard to tell, and maybe there's some overlap. It's a word that you just have to kind of look as to where it's used. Sometimes it actually has to do with the totality or the sum of something, like this. James 3:6, the tongue is a fire, a world of unrighteousness. It's like, it's just the sum, it's the total of unrighteousness. Again, it's more like a system of that, it's an order. So those are some of the ways that it can be used. But then it's got this darker meaning. And it very often, just like in 1 John 2, it's got, like 1 John 5:19, we know that we are from God, and the whole world lies in the power of the evil one. What you have is a world order, a system. It's the way the world is, the way the world thinks, the way the world operates. And the devil, and based on what it seems from Scripture, a third of these angels that fell in large numbers, they operate in this world. You get glimpses, like in Daniel, of the Prince of Persia. Definitely not a human being. This Prince of Persia did battle with an angel that was coming to Daniel, resisted him. Michael the archangel had to be dispatched to get him through. We're looking at cosmic forces, just like it talks about these authorities, these powers in heavenly places, and Prince of Persia, they control nations and governments, and there seems to be a hierarchy and a working, and they basically control this world to destroy. That's what he comes for. To destroy, to deceive, to kill. He is cruel in his ways. He comes to do battle against the church. He wages war. He is seeking listen, this, if you guys need to get this. There is such a being who it seems at one time was some kind of crowning cherub. He was one of the most, if not the most glorious of the angelic beings. So you've got to know that he had wisdom and knowledge of unbelievable capacity, and he fell, and he took a third of the angels with him. Brethren, he exists to destroy God's people. When you see this dragon in the book of Revelation, I'll tell you what he's doing. He's chasing this woman. This woman, if you examine and you look, it basically is a picture of the true people of God. It's a picture of true Israel. It's a picture of the one from whom the Christ came, and he is chasing them. He's dogging them, their steps. He does battle with them. Brethren, he is going about seeking to destroy. And what you have to realize is he is in control of this world. The prince of the power of the air, he rules here. I recognize God is sovereign. It's partial dominion at best. It's restricted dominion. We see it in Revelation 20. He's on a chain. But no doubt anyways, in some limited capacity, he has the authority here. He has authority in this world, so much so that he could say to Christ, I'll give you the kingdoms of this world if you bow down to me. Brethren, he is in control. And if you think about that for a second, here we are put out into the midst of the world as servants of Christ to declare his glory and his gospel. And in the midst of that world, it is controlled by demons all around us all the time, in a sense that it is going to try, that world is going to try to conform us and spot us all the time. And it's with intent. It's not like, well, we just might happen to rub against it when we go out these doors. Brethren, it's the fact that there are armies arrayed against us, working this thing so as to bring us down, to contaminate us, and to conform us into something that won't be useful to Christ, something that will be defeated, something that will be ugly, something that will be unclean. Brethren, this is what's happening. There is a darker meaning. There's a world around us that is a real enemy to the soul. Christ said this, do not be surprised, brothers, that the world hates you. Okay, there you have it. Now, brethren, there's the kind of hatred where a guy says to one of his friends, you know, like you're in high school and you're going to sit down at a table to eat lunch, and you say to your friend, I hate that guy, let's go eat at another table. That's not the kind of hatred of the world. It would be more akin to this. I hate that guy, and you dive across the table and you take him out. You see, this is an enemy that is against us. This is a foe that means to do us harm. This is not a foe that hates us and tries to stay as far away from us as possible. This is a foe that is constantly trying to trip us and stain us and mold us into its fashion. So you've got to resist, you've got to fight, and you've got to know that it's for real, and you've got to know it hates you. And it hates you with the kind of hatred that is seeking to destroy you, not stay away from you. You adulterous people, James 4:4, do you not know that friendship with the world is enmity with God? Therefore, whoever wishes to be a friend of the world makes himself an enemy of God. So here's the thing. The world tries to spot you, stain you, corrupt you, conform you, mold you. And basically what this is saying is, if you yield to it, you are an enemy of God. Amen. So, to the people that resist the conformity, they're friends of God, and the world hates them. But if you allow it to bend you, you're an enemy of God. If you like its shape, if you like its fashion, you show hatred to God yourself. This world hates you. This world hates Christ. This world hates God. And basically what the Scriptures plainly teach is to be conformed to it, is to show animosity towards God Himself. Well, brethren, so worldliness is what happens to us when the world comes along, seeks to spot us or conform us, and we begin to conform or spot. It wipes against us. Brethren, in some ways, living in this world, it's much like, remember when Jesus washed the feet of His disciples? And He said, you're clean already, just the feet. To the Christian, it's often like that. We go out in the world. You ever get out in the world and you just feel unclean? I mean, you're around stuff, and it's like today at the campus ministry, I was waiting for the guys, and I sat just off the campus right there, if you're familiar with SAC, right there where all the people, kind of the rebels go to smoke. You know, right there at that corner, coming down that hill. I just went over there and sat among those folks because I felt like I wanted to get the gospel to them. But I sat there and I just listened to them. Foul, filthy mouths. You know, you get out in the midst of that and it's just, you can feel... I mean, I didn't. I didn't. That's an example. I mean, I felt that the Lord was there and was in it and prevented that from happening. But I know that there's sometimes when I've been in certain situations and I feel ugly. I feel defiled from it. But let me ask you this. What do you think worldliness is? Give me an example. And what is worldliness? We toss that around. Well, they're worldly. That guy professes to be a Christian, but he's really worldly. What do we mean by that? I mean, obviously, they're being conformed. They're fitting the mold. There's some of the defilements of the world that we seem to see. Give me some examples.
It's a mindset, like the rich young ruler.
It's a mindset. But give me some examples of how that mindset expresses itself.
Selfishness.
What's that?
Selfishness.
Is that typically what we think of when we think of worldliness?
Materialism.
Materialism? I mean, think with me here. Church on Sunday, you look over and you just think inside, man, that person is world. I mean, let's ask it this way. Have you ever looked at somebody and had that thought? They're worldly? What did you see in them or about them that made you think that?
Vanity.
What's that?
Vanity, like a lot of...
Vanity. Vanity's a big one. That oftentimes goes, how does vanity express itself? I mean, I know...
Sensuality.
Yeah.
Sensuality. Maybe immodesty. I mean,
Basically, their fruit, right?
what's that?
Like their fruit, right?
Well, I mean, basically, worldliness is going to be when you have somebody that resembles the world, right? And so, if we're going to say, well, that person's pretty worldly, what we mean by that is this demon, devil-controlled world around us has a certain look to it. And that person right there, they strongly resemble that. Or they look just like that. I mean, what is it that's true of the world?
They like the same things that everybody else does.
How is the world? I mean, what's the mindset of the world today?
Prideful.
Very prideful.
Seeks its own pleasure.
Seeks its own pleasure. I mean, basically when I think about what the world looks like, I think, for one, I mean, you want the perfect indicator of where the world's at? Look at the world's advertising. That's such an easy and yet very profound indicator of where society is, where the world is. And basically advertising, it shows you the very heart of what this world's all about. I mean, it shows you what it thinks about sex, it shows you what it thinks about alcohol, it shows you what it thinks about money, about making the other guy look stupid, about self-exaltation, how you ought to dress, what beer you ought to drink, what food you ought to eat, what restaurant you ought to visit, what sports stars you ought to worship. I mean, it basically comes along and it's like, that word vanity is a good one. It's like Vanity Fair. You remember that in Pilgrim's Progress? You go into Vanity Fair and you know what they found? They found all the goods and the wares that the world had to offer. And there was British row, and there was French row, and there was German row, and Italian row, and it had all the stuff. And they resisted dressing like the people there. You remember that? Faithful and Christian. They resisted buying what the world had to offer. They weren't interested. And it had all these things to sell. Worldliness. Brethren, you were dead in the trespasses and sins in which you once walked, following the course of this world. You know what worldly is? You really want to define it? It is following the course of this world. So, the world wants to stain you, it wants to conform you, and it wants you to follow it. Those are three ways that the Bible shows us what that world is trying to get us to do. Be unclean, trying to get us shaped, trying to get us to walk a certain way. And that's the idea. We followed the course of this world. Followed the prince of the power of the air. I mean, he's the one controlling this whole thing. But that's the picture. That's the idea of worldliness. I mean, let me ask you this. Is loving sports being conformed to the world? Is playing sports being conformed to the world? Did all the guys that played Frisbee on Sunday conform to the world? Is wearing a mini skirt being conformed to the world? Is chewing tobacco being conformed to the world? Getting a tattoo being conformed to the world? Is going to an expensive restaurant being conformed to the world? How about having to have the latest tennis shoes, most expensive, surround sound, got to have the latest 60-inch screen at home? Always having the latest computer, latest car, perfect lawn, got to beat the Joneses next door. Got to divorce your wife and find a better one. Some of you have nodded at some of you have looked uncertain at others. But see, it was brought up before that it's a mindset. Well, let's get back to our text. Do not love the world or things in the world. Okay, I mean that right there. Don't love the world. Okay, it's a satanically controlled system that's all around us. or the things in the world. Well, now wait a second. What are the things that are in the world? Can I take my wife out to dinner? Can I take my family out and eat at Los Barrios on Monday? I mean, it says, do not love the world or the things in the world. Would it be wrong for us to say, oh, we love eating there on Mondays? We love the fact that we can get, for $13, enough fajita to feed the whole family.
Context.
But isn't that a thing that's in the world? Aren't there a whole bunch of people eating at Los Barrios on Monday night that are going to die and go to hell, and all the while they were following that Ephesians 2, those first few verses there describe them absolutely perfectly. They're in love with the world, they're in love with the things of the world, they're conformed to the world, they're spotted by the world, they're controlled by the devil, and they're on their way to hell, marching file right that way. And they're eating on the table next to us.
People can eat to the glory of God.
As you're saying.
Also, it's got something to do with the glory of God, maybe. Can I play Frisbee to the glory of God?
Okay.
Can I divorce my wife and marry another one to the glory of God? Okay, so we may be onto something there, right? We may be onto something. But listen to this. Do not love the world or the things in the world. If anyone loves the world, the love of the Father is not in him. One thing about Scripture, it just drops it like a ton of lead right on you. So absolute. Why? I mean, come on, John. Give us a little slack here. Can I love some things in the world just a little? Why does it seem like so often Scripture just... I mean, if anyone loves the world, the love of the Father is not in him. Period. You know why? You know why I have to believe that? Because just like with the rest of John, if you come along and you say you know him and you don't keep his commandments, bang! Again, just boom, hit you with a ton of lead. You're a liar. Brethren, the reality is this. It's like Paul Washer said before. If you came in this door right now and you told us you just got hit by an 18-wheeler and you look just like you all look right now, we'd all say you're lying to us. I don't think that's the basic weight of the matter. He's saying, look, when you're born again, and when you're indwelt by the Spirit of God, it is so radical and it so produces a love for God and a hate for this world that it is so stark, it is so real, it is so obvious that is there a battle? Well, yes, there's a battle because obviously we've got to wage war against these anti-soul forces, one of which is the world that we're not to be conformed to, we're not to love it. Yes. And so there is this fight not to do it, but it is so real and it is so... brethren, it isn't the kind of thing where you live your life in love with the world all the time and you're trying to get out the magnifying glass and stare and look and strain and squint to figure out if you're a Christian or not. The truth is, this is so obvious when it happens to somebody's life. It takes them where they're in this course and it totally spins them around so obviously that, brethren, I've seen it. I've seen this happen to people. The worldliness just starts to fall off. One after another, it falls off. And I'll tell you this, people that have supposedly had this amazing transformation happen in their life and conversion, and all of a sudden 2, 3, 4, 5 years down the road, the worldliness just hasn't fallen off, brethren. There's no truth to it. Mm-hmm. You say, well, you can't say that. You're judging. I can say that because God's Word says that. If that person shows by a continuous ongoing lifestyle that they're in love with the world, they do not love God. They are those adulteresses and adulterers that James is dealing with, and they're at enmity with God.
That's right.
Lay it down. Hands down, folks. This is absolute. I mean, this is Brethren, yes, there's a battle. I don't doubt that. But this is a battle for life and death. And that's what we're told here. Listen, it says that, verse 17, the world is passing away along with its desires, compared against this. Whoever does the will of God abides forever. Now, you say, well, how does he get to the will of God? Oh, brethren, John's on this all the time. Love, obedience. Love the will of God. Love the commandments. If you love me, you'll keep my commandments. That's all John. John loves to throw that kind of thing at us. He doesn't see any difference. He basically says that person that loves God is the person that follows the commandments of God. He does the will of God. He ties those things together. And the person that does that abides forever. This is life and death. This is eternal life. I mean, brethren, if you love the world, the love of the Father isn't in you. You're going to perish. Life and death. He's laying this out. But somebody can come along and say, wait. Whoever does the will of God abides forever. He does. That's doing. What this is saying is, if I do, I abide forever. If I do, I go to be with God forever. How come that sounds so unlike being saved by faith? I mean, right here in the same book, brethren, 1 John 5:4. Everyone who's been born of God overcomes the world, and this is the victory that overcomes the world, our faith. So here we are in this battle to the life and death with the world. And John says, you know what gets you the victory in the end? Faith. But brethren, you know, we could go through probably 90% of the churches, 95% of the churches on Sunday. And if we were to ask folks in those churches and ask the men in the pulpit, how is a man saved? You believe we overcome by faith? Probably 95% of them would say yes. If you went and talked to Jehovah's, well, it's not 95 because we got Catholicism here. Barring the Catholics and barring the Jehovah's Witnesses and the Mormons, 95% of them are going to tell you yes, we're saved. What are they going to tell you? What are they going to quote? And they're basically, what must I do to be saved? And you know the answer. John 3:16, you know the answer. Ephesians 2, verses 8 and 9, you know the answer. And they're all going to tell you that. But then if you said, well, how come John tells me that I have to do these things if I'm going to abide forever? I have a feeling that a lot of them, they don't have a good answer for that. And you see, the thing is, you got people running all over the place. We were just a group of us who were sitting at the Munoz's on Sunday, and we were talking about the fact that some guy that used to be in the church is arguing against lordship salvation. And brethren, basically this whole camp that opposed and wrote against John MacArthur when he came out with his book, The Gospel According to Jesus. You got a whole camp out there. Brethren, the world is just full of this. People who say that if you say you got to repent, if you say that you got to bring forth fruit, if you say any of this, you're adding to grace. You're adding to faith. Brethren, that's not the case at all. What the world doesn't seem to understand, what a lot of men that stand in the pulpit don't seem to understand, is indeed we are justified by faith. But any faith that saves us is faith that overcomes. It's faith that believes that God is so desirable and so lovable, so love worthy, so worship worthy. Christ is so magnificent and so worthy to be followed and to be had at all costs. That's what true faith is. It's when I believe that He is a treasure of inestimable value and I'm willing to endure anything to have Him. That's the truth of faith. You see, that's what shows it. That's what we're told. The faith is going to get put to the test. And if it's really true, see how that glorifies Christ? When you bring this faith along that says, I believe Christ is all, and then you say, oh yeah? Well, let's just like Job, let's put it in the furnace. And then it comes out. Wow, it's still good. He still wants God more than anything else. Let's put it in the furnace even more. You bring it out. You see how much God got glory? You see what was going on behind the scenes? Brings God tremendous glory. Well, this is the thing. When you take somebody and you say, oh, God says, let their eyes be open. Let there be light. Let them see the glory of Christ. Okay, now put them in Vanity Fair. See if devil, try to sell them the best of your goods. And they come through clean, unspotted, unconformed. Brethren, they can abide forever? Yes. They were saved. They were justified by faith. But that faith proved true. The faith proves true by what it does in this world. Brethren, that's the issue. Passing away. You see, the things of this world, the things that belong to this world, it's passing away. And brethren, those people that delight in this world, passing away. Brethren, you see where John's arguing? He says, don't love the world or the things in the world. And in verse 17, he says, the world's passing away along with its desires. It's like, it would be like, like something like 9/11. I mean, can you imagine if people went up to an aircraft and it said, this aircraft is passing away. You will not make it to your destination. But climb on board and enjoy, because until it passes away, there's going to be lots of partying, lots of fun. You see, that's what Vanity Fair is. All these people partying, all these people living it up, all these people having fun, but death is just around the corner. That's what that aircraft says. Passing away. This is what John's arguing. He's saying, don't get on board that plane. I mean, the ship's going to sink, folks. Don't get on there. Stay off that plane. Coming to a tragic end. Yeah, it may be lots of fun till you get there. But I'll tell you this, brethren, passing away is just, it's a smooth way of saying it's coming to utter destruction. So, let's just, I'm going to wrap up with this. What is it that makes something truly worldly? We've had it thrown out, well, maybe vanity, that's good. Maybe it's a way of thinking, that's definitely good. But John doesn't leave us in the dark here. He describes what this world looks like with three very plain, very obvious descriptions. If you're there in 1 John, you want to look at verse 16. For all that is in the world. So don't love the world or the things in the world. Well, what are the things in the world that I'm not supposed to love? Fajitas? Cars? What are the things in the world? I mean, how do I distinguish? Should I own a TV? Shouldn't I own a TV? Should I be on Facebook? Shouldn't I be on Facebook? Should I go to an R-rated movie? An X-rated movie? PG-13? I mean, how do we, what's in the world. If I go sit in a theater, I guarantee you there's a bunch of people there that are conformed to the world. I can't get away from it that if I seek to live in this world, there are going to be things that I do that the world does. But is it just in my doing it, or is it in the mindset? And even if it's in the mindset, are there certain things that given a certain mindset that you just would not do no matter what your mindset is? I mean, isn't it that if you belong to God, you are going to have a certain mindset that is definitely going to keep you from doing some of the things they do, and even if you end up doing some of the things they do, you're going to end up doing it with a different mindset. Some of the things by their very character you can't do because of the mindset. Some of the things you may be able to allow yourself to do because of your mindset, but you won't do it with the same mindset. So what is it? John's ready. I mean, he's diving straight at this thing. He's saying, folks, I want to leave no mistake in your mind about what these things look like. Bang, first one. Desires of the flesh. Well, I mean, the desire of the flesh. That's the first one. The second one, the desires of the eyes. Third one, pride of possessions. So what does this look like? These are three different things. First, desires of the flesh. What does that look like? Well, basically, drunkenness, gluttony, sexual perversion. And notice, I say drunkenness. I don't say drinking alcohol. Notice I say gluttony. I don't say eating food. Notice I say sexual perversion. I don't say sex at all. You see, what the world does, it says, come on, let's go have fun. Cut loose. No restraints. Nothing held back. Let's just go live it up. Eat and drink, folks, for tomorrow we die. Let's go do it. Maximum pleasure with no concern about what? What's at the end of verse 17?
Passing away.
But at the end of 17, the will of God. See, that's how you know the world. When it comes to the desires of the flesh. You know what? Many of the appetites that God has given, let me say it this way, many of the appetites are God-given. God gave us an appetite to drink, to eat, to desire sexual intimacy. He's given us those. He designed that into the fabric of what we are as human beings. There are many things in the physical realm that are enjoyable, that are pleasant, that are pleasurable. But you see where the world gets off on this thing? It's just no restraint. Who's the Lord that I should obey Him? Let's just cut loose. And so, there's one thing. God has given us parameters in which, and brethren, whatsoever you do, whether you eat or drink, what? Do it to the glory of God. Brethren, I'll tell you this. You remember again, this is just haunting all the time. That what the world did that unleashed the wrath of God against all their unrighteousness and ungodliness, one of the most severe of all their crimes, they don't give thanks to God. They eat. You just watch them. People sit down to eat and they just go at it. No thought to the Lord. No thought to thank Him. No thought whatsoever. just lay into it. They don't give God any regard that it came from Him. Brethren, let that never be. Don't be conformed to the world. The ways of the world, it seeks all its pleasures, and it seeks them any way they can get them without any consideration to what God has said in His Word, but then without any consideration that God gave them the ability to enjoy those things. But then it's not only the desire to have pleasure and to get it anyway, without any regard to God, without any regard to His glory. It's also the I. It's not just so much what my bodily appetites desire. Man is driven by what looks good. Again, go to the advertising. They try to make the cars look more sleek and desirable all the time. No, my Venture van is not nice to look at. But it gets me where I need to go. And it gets me there cheaply. It's about got the best gas mileage, 27, 28 miles a gallon of any minivan. It's not going to win a beauty contest. But I don't care. I'm trying to get through this life, and I'm trying to do it at minimum cost and be the best steward I can of what God has given to me. It's protected my family, got my family to Bible study tonight. But you see, that's not the way the world thinks. When the world goes down the road, it wants to look good. It wants to appease the eye. Brethren, there is it's amazing. Think about what people will go through for paintings. I mean, I know there was a painting that my grandfather had of apples. And I remember how everybody in the family wanted it. Everybody wanted it. Everybody coveted it. Highly coveted. A picture of apples. But that's the way the world is. Everything's got to look good. It's an appeal to the eye, where the Christian says, I can enjoy things that look beautiful. But they're not driven. There's not this driving force for curb appeal that the world feels. I mean, I can remember, I don't know where I was, but probably, I don't even think I was there. It seems like we were traveling somewhere. We were in a hotel and that had cable. They had one of these shows on that had a couple that were they were looking for a new house. Why? How do they even make a show out of that? But they go to all these houses, and I remember looking, and it's like, no, I don't like this one because the bathroom isn't the right color. Well, we could change this and we could do that. We could make this look this way and make that look another way. And brethren, people live for that. They just live to have everything perfect, to make everything right. They're just driven. It's like this driving force and it's the eye. I mean, you see desires of the eyes. It's what this world is just driven by the way things look. By things that they see, by covetousness in the eye. They see it and they've got to have it. That's why advertising works. Show it to them. Look how beautiful this is. Doesn't matter they already have one there, but that one's new, it's better, it's greater, shines more. Men are sold on sparkle, on glitz. That's why. That's why in the typical high school, the typical college, the girl that walks in the room and turns everybody's head isn't the most righteous one. She's the prettiest one. That's why when they make the commercials, they don't show a guy, big old masculine He-Man driving a Chevy Venture. He's driving a BMW or something. He's driving something that's fast. That's how the world is. It's driven by that. But here's the thing. It's in love with it. It loves it. And then you have pride of possessions. This is the word that's used again in 1 John 3:17. If anyone has this world's goods and sees his brother in need, yet closes his heart against him, how does God's love abide in him? It's the word goods. It's the same word used when the widow threw in all her livelihood, all her goods. The term, that's what it is, livelihood. It's goods, it's possessions. It's basically, you guys know the bumper sticker. What does it say?
Who has the most toys when they die wins?
He who has the most toys when they die wins. That's the world. And so the world is just accumulating, 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 accumulating stuff. It's a competition. That's the attitude everybody has. They have to get and get and get and get. And so that's how the world operates. So here's the thing. We come along and we say, well, do I have to eat at Los Barrios? Well, I mean, if I'm asking all the time, does it make me look good? You see, it comes back to that mindset. You know why I go there? Dollars. It's the cheapest place I can take my whole family, 6 people. I can't even eat for $13 typically at McDonald's. It costs about the same because I found a place that has a Monday night deal. But now if I went there, if I went to a place because it was all you can eat and I just wanted to glut myself, if I wanted to go to a place because I was concerned how I was going to look when I was going in there, you see, it is a mindset. You see, the question can be asked, should I desire to eat at Los Barrios? Should I desire to eat at Ruth's Chris? I have eaten there once because some very kind brethren in the church gave my wife and I a gift card for there for our anniversary, I believe. But I'm not eating there any other time because I want to be a good steward of God's money. And we can ask ourselves this, should I desire to eat at Ruth's Chris? Should I desire to own a 1967 Ford Mustang? Should I desire a wife? Should I desire dinner? And you see what he's saying is, if you love the world, you hate God. You can't have both. You either love God or you love the world. It's the fight to not compartmentalize my life. You know what I mean by that? This is what strikes me. It's the fight to not say, okay, this part of my life is sacred. This part of my life is it's ordinary, it's secular, it's... Which a lot of people do that. I mean, people all over the place try to give God His due on Sundays, maybe some of the real good ones on Wednesdays, or whatever. But, brethren, even though we would look at that and maybe we would say, well, yeah, you know, Sunday morning Christians are no Christians at all. But brethren, we can still get in the place where there's parts of our life. You see, this is the issue. This is the key. Brethren, I'll tell you this. If you have a segment of your life that you find, you know what? I never think to thank God doing that. I don't even think of God while I'm doing that. In fact, that part of my life is kind of reserved to almost forget Him. Not that we would say it purposely, but when we get into that segment of our life, we kind of just forget Him. He drops out of the picture. Brethren, that's worldly. Dump it. Be done with it. Amen. What God is saying to us is whatever you do, you need to do for His glory. Whatever you do, you need to do that He be central to it. Whatever you do, you need to do in a way that you can be thankful for it, that you can appreciate Him for it. You say, what? What? Could I drink a beer and do that? Well, I think Christ drank wine at a wedding and He did everything to His Father's glory. You say, even if I got married and I was being intimate with my spouse? Well, of course. Have you never read 1 Timothy 4? He designed just such things for you to enjoy and again to give thanksgiving for. Amen. Brethren, God isn't a killjoy. But He doesn't come along and say, go build brick walls around you and live in there, in the dark, behind all the bricks. But He says, and He doesn't say you can't eat. He doesn't even say you can't eat at Ruth's Chris. He didn't even say you can't spend your own money, and it doesn't have to even be somebody that gives you a gift card. But if you can do it to the glory of God and take your wife out, and if you're living like that all the time, I think you're wrong. Let's tell you that right up front. I think it's a waste of money. I mean, why in the world would you want to spend $100 on a meal when you can spend $10? But everybody's got to sort that out on themselves. And that's really key too. Because somebody can come along and say, you know what? I think what you're doing is worldly. And that person, you know what? It's like I remember being up there at John Piper's conference one time. He said he just pictured a piece, I think it was lemon meringue pie, and he just acted it out. He's at the pulpit and he stabs a piece of it and he's like, oh, thank you, Lord. And he just acted it out and it was just wonderful. Now somebody could look at that and say, what's he doing eating that? Don't you know what's dietarily proper? You don't eat that. Listen, you can't do that. We can't set up those standards for other people. You know what? That person eating that piece of lemon meringue pie to the glory of the Lord over against you sitting back here judging them for it, I'll tell you which one's most glorifying to God. Amen. And it ain't you that's back there thinking you're somehow supreme and superior in not eating. But brethren, these are the ruling principles, and I really think I'm come back to this. I think where we have to fight this thing most aggressively is we don't make compartments out of our life. We don't say, okay, it's Sunday morning, I'm going to church, but now I get out and I can run over to McDonald's. Brethren, if you can't do that to the glory of God, don't do it. And you know, I can tell you, come Sunday afternoon, typically I am absolutely and utterly worn out. And I can tell you honestly, there have been times I've been able to sit down and plunk down in front of a football game and say, glory to God. Thank you. Thank you. That now I made it through today, and now, Lord, you're bringing me a moment of relaxation, and I can do it with brethren around me. And my wife doesn't have to cook, and I can just run up to the counter and get food whenever I want. Because undoubtedly, some Sabbatarian's going to come along and tell me I'm doing wrong over here, and then another one's going to come along and tell me I'm wrong for watching the football game. And I mean, look, those things can be wrong. And I mean, everything has to be weighed out. We want to make sure we do what we do for the glory of God. We want to make sure we're not making other people stumble. We want to make sure that we're being a good testimony and a good witness. Because after all, the riding force here is the will of God, the love of God, the glory of God. And brethren, if you've got a place in your life where there's something you're doing and it's highly questionable, get rid of it. You got an area of your life that you're doing and you can't give God thanks for it, get rid of it. You got an area of your life that you just don't know how God could be glorified in it, get rid of it. Do not break up your life into these segments where I know this is pleasing, I know this is pleasing, and because I pleased Him here and pleased Him here, well, I can kind of get away and not please Him here. He certainly wouldn't mind if I got this little segment of my life that somehow, well, you know, it's just kind of, maybe it's indifferent in your estimation, or it's just neutral. Nothing's neutral, brethren. Nothing's neutral. You don't find any middle point. I mean, either live for the glory of God or you don't. That's true. There may be some things in Scripture that you can vindicate and validate and think that is better, approve things that are excellent. Obviously not everything is excellent. Some things are less excellent, some things are good. We want to try. There's another place. We want to try to frame our lives and to conform our lives where more and more we are involving ourselves only in those things that are excellent, approving what is excellent. Obviously there are some things that are good and there are things that are better. And we want to give ourselves to the things that are best. But brethren, that doesn't mean that you're reading your Bible 24 hours a day. That's not best. You got to sleep. You got to listen, rest and relaxation is a part of what we need. And so if you say, well, it's got to be best if I stay up, 18 straight hours. Well, that may not be best. You look at somebody and you say, well, that guy's worldly. He sleeps 9 hours a day. Well, you know what? He may be wired that way and he may need it. I mean, we don't want to stand in judgment of others, but brethren, we want to look. You see where the world's coming from. The world does not have regard for God. It does not have regard for His glory. It does not have regard for thanksgiving. It does not have regard for His will. Basically, the desires of the flesh, and it's just led about on a leash, serves its lusts, serves its eyeballs, proud as anything over its possessions. First two are lusts that come out for things we don't have. Our eye wants, greed, lust. The second thing is the pride there of things we already do have, just accumulating and proud. Brethren, you got things that look like that in your life, there's a conformity to the world, and that is enmity with God. Stuff. People living for the toys, living for the stuff. Augustine said this, "He loves thee too little, who loves anything together with thee which he loves not for thy sake." Did you catch that? Brethren, what Augustine said is this: nothing is worth loving, having in your life and loving, unless you love it for God's sake. In other words, if you're going to pull things to you in this world, you're going to use things in this world, if you're going to have any measure of delight in things in this world, then let it be for God's sake. Let it be with a mind to Him. How to bring Him the greatest glory in the midst of it. How to love Him supremely in the midst of it. That's what he's saying. That goes right along with this verse. Well, you guys get a feel. Worldliness.